I want to thank everyone for attending our workshop. This is the first of three. The second one will be 2 weeks from now, February 1st, and the third will be on February 15th. And, I want to thank Federico for doing this with us. He's going to say, and I'm going to say, that learning these new ways of talking about politics, about issues, is a practice. And so what does a practice mean? What does it require? It requires repetition. And, we have to break the old habits of falling into using the words that the opposition uses and figure out a better way. And there are better ways. And so with that, I give you Federico Cura. Thank you very much, Federico, and everyone.
Thank you so much, Greg.
Right. Just one more thing, sorry.
Oh, sure, you go ahead.
So,
go ahead.
I'll be monitoring the chat. I don't know if we'll get to everything. I'll be keeping notes on the back of an envelope. And we do want to encourage participation. There will be several times when Federico opens it up. And so, please use the reactions, little smiley face down in the bottom of your screen and raised hand and to talk, and I'll recognize you, and we'll get some good feedback. We want to move things along, so well, I'll leave it at that. So sorry, Federico, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So again, thank you, Greg, and thank you, Fairfax Democrats, for giving me this great opportunity to speak about something that's been my passion for the past 10, 15 years. It all started with a book. It's called Don't Think of an Elephant, from George Lakoff. So anyway, I'm going to review what we did in the last workshop. So that was November 16th, and that is available on YouTube if you're interested. So we've been talking, we Democrats have been talking about messaging as an issue, as a problem for a long time, and we've known that countless Americans vote against their self-interest. But so many tied to education, but there's much more to it. So I'm going to warn you that there are some words that I'm going to use in this presentation that may trigger a red flag. It's kind of a mild red flag. The words moral, morality, the words feelings, gut feelings, emotions, the words framing, mental frames. And also you may hear a little bit of repetition, which may also trigger a red flag. But you should know that all these words, morality, feelings, framing, repetition, these are crucial components of a new and more effective communication style that we Dems need to adopt. So we need to understand, why voters. Voters need to know that Dems are highly moral people and patriotic people. So these are some of the things but part of the problem that we've had is that since the early 80s, the GOP and right-wing Christian and media establishment have managed to instill in society ultra-narrow definitions of morality and patriotism. As Democrats and caring Americans, it's our duty to change that, to expand those definitions before it's too late. Can you imagine what we could accomplish if more Americans believe that patriotism means caring about what happens to all Americans, and that liberty and justice is meant for all, not just a lucky few? So the other side brings up lies, misinformation. We bring up the truth, but with help of people like me, the truth in a way that sticks in people's brains. Okay, so So this is basically, I named this presentation the secret sauce. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and bring up the PowerPoint. Let's see. I'm going to see if I can share. Oh, here it is. Fantastic. All right, so can everyone see the presentation? I don't know if you can see it. Can people see the presentation? No.
Yes.
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 You can.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Full-
Alrighty. So
Not full screen, that helps.
Yeah, it's not full screen. That's the only thing.
is it full screen now? Is it better now?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so the secret sauce, better frame democratic messages. Okay, this is the first post-introductory workshop, and you can see in the picture former presidential candidate John Kerry with George W. Bush. This is around 2004, and this is kind of when I first got a hint that a very smart, eloquent politician can win a battle and lose the war, and that's a little bit what I'm basically what we talk about in terms of communication. Some of the things we do, but we'll get more into that. So in the last, I'm going to review a little briefly the last what we covered in the introductory workshop. Okay, so let me just see. For some reason, let me see. We go here. Okay, so proactive, strategic, science-driven, properly framed democratic messages, and that's what we're talking about. All right, noise. So, and democratic messages today must get through much noise. We know there is a less influential newspaper industry. Misinformation, lies spread quickly in social media and right-wing control Facebook. There's, of course, still deceptive right-wing propaganda outlets, activists everywhere. I see them at the bank where I work. They come in and they make a little comment. They're very activated because, frankly, that's really the job of Fox and Breitbart is to create activists. So, and then they use a lot of tricks, a lot of like logical fallacies, hidden premises, intimidation, flood the gates technique, where they don't tell one lie, they tell 10 in a matter of a minute. And then, of course, they've taken January 6 to the U.S. House of Representatives now. So this so-called Freedom Caucus controlling the U.S. House, right? So making typical democratic messages stick in this fractured media environment requires a great deal of coordination and repetition. But as importantly, messages need to be carefully crafted, properly framed. Okay. All right. So
sorry, Federico.
Yeah.
Getting some black bands across the top of the presentation.
Oh, really? Let me just see.
Maybe, I don't know if you can refresh or something. I don't know.
Um,
So like that, where you see it, where your arrow is.
oh yeah, there is a black thing, and I'm trying to figure out. Participant. Maybe I'm just going to click this off. Let me see. Yeah, how's that? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Still one at
That
the
was the
top, but, yeah,
that
that's
was the
much
problem.
better. Thank you.
There's still one
Okay.
above it if you can click that.
Oh yeah. Let me just see. Maybe I'll put it at the bottom. Maybe for now. Let me see if I can put it on
that's
the
better.
side.
That's better.
Let's see. I'll put it over
Oop.
here. Okay. So is it everybody can see the slide?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So now I was talking about, some of the dirty tricks, the jetty mind tricks that the conservatives use. They're very aggressive, and sometimes they're very good. Logical fallacies, hidden premises, things like that. So this is something I will talk about in the next workshop, which I encourage you to attend, which is Wednesday, February 1st, at the same time as this one. So we're going to talk a little bit about the GOP chaos, noise, and all the things I just talked about. Okay. Let's see. Oops. Let me just see. I'm having a little difficulty with the. Hold on 1 second. All right. So now proper framing. Okay. So we talked a little bit about what the governor Virginia is doing, kind of some of the nasty stuff, right? But what's going on in the House of Representatives is just outright dangerous. So proper framing is crucial in dealing with a GOP-controlled U.S. House, right? And they will push legislation, messages that may at times seem reasonable, but represent a threat to American democracy, freedoms, national security, and human decency. All right, so it's just to give you a taste, okay? Indivisible National sent out, I think it's a few days ago or last week, a MAGA message decoder. So for instance, the one MAGA lie, the speaker fight was democracy in action. Another lie, we want to balance the budget when they actually want to slash Social Security and Medicare, and turn their backs on our seniors. And then they also they formed a panel to look into the origins of the coronavirus, right? It's an anti-science crusade to discourage future public safety measures aimed at protecting people. So another lie, we're going to improve the rules of the House. They actually just, want to make it easier for people, to, like George Santos, to get away and not be investigated. So then they and this one is particularly important. The Weaponization Committee, Jim Jordan, please don't use the name they used. Just avoid it at all costs. I find it very toxic. So one way to talk about, you could say the Weaponization Committee, or you could say the Insurrectionist Protection Committee, or you could say Jim Jordan's Trump Protection Committee. So, all right, moving on. Let's see. All right, so this is the way I see democratic communication today. And really, it's just the way traditional democratic communication. So it's reactive. So, all right. Now, this is how we solve it. Okay. This is sort of the gist of my presentation. There are three concepts that are very important, and I talked about two of them in the introductory workshop. From the field of linguistics, all politics is moral. Even a pothole issue has moral underpinnings, and we talked about that last time. From the field of psychology, people vote on feelings, not facts, not reason, not logic. They vote first and foremost on feelings about a political party, then on feelings about a candidate and feelings about specific issues. And from the field of neuroscience, our top communications goal really should be to connect and to activate the right mental frames, which actually they're physical in the brain, in neural circuits. We need to push the right moral buttons, not just to inform, educate, and persuade. So from the field of linguistics, right, all politics is moral. So this is what we talked about last time, right? And so we discussed how a pothole, it's often when someone has an issue about a pothole outside a house, there are other issues that are at play, right? There is safety, there is protection, there is community, there's equality and equity, right? They fixed the pothole the next neighborhood over, but they haven't fixed mine. There is open communication, transparency, perceptions that people have about local government. Okay, so now this is democrat. So what I'm going to talk a lot about democratic moral brand and the need for us to talk more, to think and talk more in terms of values. So values-centered messaging. We need to know ourselves. It's crucial. So that's why I'm really looking forward to something that we're going to do toward the end of the presentation, the workshop, where we're going to talk about this value dichotomies that Antonia Scatton wrote and that are fantastic. Just basically that define describe who we are as Democrats. So we need to know what matters to us, and we need to know why we're a Democrat, right? Democratic values, also, we need to know this, are mainstream bedrock core American values. We need to say so. We need to convey moral clarity. So we need to know our values. So that little circle that I show on the right, that I really hope people get a good sense of that. This is kind of the basic values that define who we are as Democrats, and we need to talk more in terms of those values. Now at the bottom, I'm showing what you see, those three levels. Okay. Level 3 is policy, level 2 issue area, and level 1 values, right? So one of the things that we Democrats do a lot is we tend to dwell, when we talk about any political issue, we tend to dwell on the bottom 2 levels. And so we talk about a specific issue, we talk about an issue area, education, health, public health, etc. But we rarely talk about the values that underscore these issues that are hugely important. And that's really that level 1 in there. That's really what politics is all about. Is gaining that high moral ground, and that's how we win more elections, and that's how we make the other party irrelevant. So moving on. So from the field of psychology, people vote on feelings, not facts, not reason, logic, right? So feelings, gut feelings, emotions, moral values, identity, cognitive science. That's basically psychology and linguistics and neuroscience that are part of cognitive science. Mental frames, moral brand, repetition. So are we Democrats neglecting all these things crucial to win elections? So this is all science-driven. Remember Martin Luther King's speech, right? He said, I have a dream. He didn't say I have a 10-point plan on how to fix things, right? He basically, what he did is he painted a kinder, more democratic America. And that's what we should aim for. So I'm from neuroscience, right? It's all about, the secret sauce really is activating the right mental frames in people's brains. And that's really where we need to focus. We spend a lot of time informing and educating. I think that there's this way of thinking that is who we are really, but we need to change. That is basically, if we provide a voter with enough information or important information, the voter will do the right thing, and it's not always the case. So we'll talk more about that. Now, frames, mental frames. So this is mental frames. Humans process facts using mental frames. These mental structures, conceptual frames, sometimes are tied to deeply held moral values and identity, are networks of association. They're embodied in the brain. They're physical in the brain, in neural circuits, and are part of our cognitive unconscious, determining how we perceive the world, how we conceptualize things. So, but keep those key words in mind. So mental frames are networks of association. That's why Lakoff titled his book, Don't Think of an Elephant, because, when he said that to his students, everyone thought of the elephant. And in fact, many people, when they think of an elephant, they think of other things as well, like the zoo or the African savanna or the elephant family. So we make mental associations. Facts don't, they don't stand on their own in our brains. So the key challenge, okay? So we've seen the enemy and guess what, right? So we Democrats, frankly, just essentially, we don't know who we are. There was this great article in mid-2021. So basically, many voters aren't sure what the Democratic Party stands for. So I thought it was hugely important. So this is, because it is a major democratic vulnerability. The fact that we don't communicate in terms of values, that we don't seek the high moral ground. We don't talk about freedom as often as we should. If we don't know what we stand for in moral terms, and if voters don't know, really, we basically don't know who we are. If we Democrats don't define our positive intentions, our deep moral code, who we are in moral terms, the other side will gladly fill in the blanks, gladly. Why does the GOP spend so much time trying to define our democratic moral code, our brand, right? If you think of, the hearings in the Senate for Judge Ketanji Brown talking about child safety, and, which it was just to, people were scratching their heads, but they're basically trying to define us. They're trying to define our moral code all the time, and define theirs. So who are we as Democrats, right? Are we the party of we're all in it together, the party of liberty and justice for all, of empathy, equal justice, equal opportunity? Well, this is unfortunately what a lot of people think of us. These are toxic words, but unfortunately, this is the kind of things that the kind of perception that people, wrong-headed perception that people have of Democrats. So we're the rolled up sleeves, get stuff done party. That's who we are. We believe in broad, inclusive, shared prosperity. So this is basically a mismatch between what we say. There's a mismatch between what we say and what people hear. And there's also a mismatch, as I just alluded to, between the way we Democrats see ourselves and the way we're perceived. This is huge because all politics is moral. So what contributes to this mismatch? We tend to give voters a laundry list of policies that we either have delivered or will deliver. We need less what and more why. Why we say the things we say, why we do the things we do. This is something brilliant that Antonia Scatton wrote. By the way, I'm going to put in the chat at some point her Substack channel. She's fantastic. I learn a lot from her. I'm a paid subscriber. I encourage you to also be. So let's talk about why things matter to us. That's what we need to say. Why things matter to us at a deeper level. Why we believe things are worth fighting for. We need to give people a purpose, a moral cause. We need to try morally grounded, value-centered messaging. Give our base, and this is key because I used to think that all of this I'm talking about was mainly aimed at swing voters, but the truth is that we need to aim this, better, values-based communication to the base, and we need to give them the tools to communicate and brand the Democratic coalition effectively. And when they're excited and they're jazzed up, then they will get swing voters to vote the right way. So they will remember basically how something affects freedom. So folks will remember how something affects freedom more than a statistic, okay? Freedom, empathy, social responsibility, unity is who we are. We need to speak from the heart, but in a way that sticks in people's brains. So who are we, okay? So this is from Indivisible's, this practical guide to defending MAGA that I mentioned. So this guide is sort of short on messaging and high, basically long on tactical, right? But it did have these little nuggets that I thought were brilliant. So the guide says we need an even stronger, broadly appealing democratic identity that voters feel reflected by, and that makes it easier for Democrats to accomplish big wins when they have majorities. We must strengthen the Democratic brand in a way that makes it inevitable that elected Democrats are willing to truly fight for our priorities and save our democracy. And so millions more people choose Democrats at the ballot box. And then similarly, we need to basically talk about GOP extremism, and we need to make the Republican brand toxic. So at the end of the day, our goal is to make their brand so nauseous that they're scared to follow through with their toxic agenda. And that's how we beat them in 2024. Brand, okay? So they're talking about brand, right? Indivisible, and I talk a lot about brand, okay? So what could be missing in a traditional democratic communication strategy, emphasizing informing, educating, persuading, right? So I would argue a lot of Democrats don't really understand what a brand is and why, you know, companies spend, you know, tons of, you know, millions and millions on branding products and you know, and themselves. So brand, the sum total of all visual and non-visual, verbal and non-verbal, tangible and non-tangible elements that help to identify, form, create, and influence unique and positive associations for a product, service, or entity. In this case would be a democratic moral brand that differentiates it from its competition, creating meaning, value, and preference in one's mind. So the other factor is we Democrats we neglect the moral dimension of politics. I talked a lot about this in the last workshop, but I'll revisit a little bit. So in the last workshop, we talked about the mask mandates and you know how Democratic elected officials were trying to get people to wear masks to protect themselves and their families and to get vaccinated. But the other side just came in with a freedom argument, which they always do, and they turn all these things into a freedom issue, and it killed me because you know it was just a missed opportunity really for us when we don't talk about the why we prescribe certain policies. People will fill in the blanks, especially the other side. They will fill in the blanks, and it gets nasty, and they define us as anti-freedom, and that's the furthest from the truth. Now, what do we do when someone, you know, comes up with something, you know, something that is kind of a conspiracy theory, right? You take a step back. First, you stop. You take a step back. Okay. What's the bottom line? Okay. What moral values are at stake? So how does it relate to empathy, for instance? A lot of what we Democrats do and say relates to empathy. How does the issue relate to the pursuit of life, freedom, and broad inclusive prosperity for all? How does the issue relate to government of, by, and for the people? This is something that George Lakoff talks about. Never underestimate the power of value-centered messaging. Now, here's something that Antonia Scatton wrote that's also brilliant. Okay, we want people to think of us as good people. It's really much more important, I would say, you know, for people to think of a candidate as a good person than as a qualified person. It's more important. We can't just argue that our opponents are bad. Okay, and I'm thinking of the McAuliffe campaign. Okay, we have to express why we do what we do in moral terms, how our policies reflect our values, our deeply held values and beliefs, and help create a vision of a world that folks want to live in. She also wrote, we usually don't tell people stories that reveal our positive intentions, okay, for the things we say and the things we do. By the way, and here's something important. When we frame in moral terms, when we give people the why, when we lead with shared values, as we're going to talk about that in message structure, we help create and reinforce a democratic moral brand, which is crucial for American voters and to winning elections. Our moral brand may very well be that we're all in it together, but we need to talk about freedom. We're going to talk about that a lot. So now this is something from former Obama Communications Director Dan Pfeiffer, which I thought was brilliant too. He suggested we Democrats, we need to tie together individual policy proposals under an overarching theme of freedom. After all democratic policies at their core promote freedom, either freedom to do something or freedom from something. And then divides them into three categories of freedom. So now I'd like to open it up for discussion, folks. Sorry that I've talked so much, but I'd like to open it up for discussion and for folks on the call to tell me what types of freedom do you think Dan Pfeiffer talks about? There are three of them. You folks want to come out of mute? Hello.
Hi.
Yeah.
This is Brittany.
Oh, hi, Brittany.
Hi, I'm from Bakersfield, California,
Super.
and so that there's a freedom after all democratic politicals. There's three types of freedom. There is power, victory, and justice. Because there's justice in this country.
I got you. Yeah, that's interesting. Anybody? I mean, can anybody else has an opinion to some other type of freedom you think maybe reflected that Dan Pfeiffer may be talking about? A category.
Freedom of speech, freedom of religion.
Okay.
Freedom from gun violence.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, I've got three: freedom to do something, freedom to avoid something being done to you, and freedom to avoid bad outcomes. Like which could include society, bad outcomes in society that damage your life. So affirmative as well as and the underlying moral message is to create a good life.
Yes. Yeah. Sounds good. Anyone else?
For the record, FDR had 4 freedoms rather than
really?
3.
What were they?
Freedom of speech and expression, freedom of worship, freedom from want, and freedom from fear.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so folks,
and I think freedom from fear is really paramount at this time. We have a lot of reasons to be fearful.
Yeah.
From the GOP and from what's going to happen to our democracy, what's going to happen tomorrow if they don't pass the debt ceiling limit.
The debt ceiling. No, I know I'm terrified about that too. Yeah. So
freedom to love.
True. But just so we're gonna let's see what he has, what he suggests. Just about FDR, when I think of his words and I think of us Democrats, I would say, the only thing we Democrats have to fear is it's our current moral void, the way we're not perceived as our lack of moral brand. Basically, I would say that's the worst thing we have to fear. But anyway, so let's go here. So we have first personal freedom. So freedom to control your body without interference, right? Constitutionally protected, safe and legal abortion, freedom to marry the person you love, marriage equality, freedom from fear. There we go. The fear of being shot in your community, and gun safety reforms, right? Then we also have economic freedom. So freedom to be paid fairly for your work, and that's where we tie to raising the minimum wage, right? Freedom from paralyzing educational debt, student loan relief, freedom to care for ourselves and our families without losing our jobs, like paid family leave. Democratic freedom, freedom to vote for your preferred candidates, constitutionally protected freedom to vote, freedom from right-wing politicians who attempt to rig the game, constitutionally protected early vote for working parents and political districts aligned with the intent of the US Constitution, not all gerrymandered, right? Freedom from the ultra-rich buying elections, political donations, transparency. So this is basically, but it's very important what he says, that we need to basically tie everything to freedom. So now it gave me, the last election gave me a little bit of hope when I heard the now Maryland governor and the now Pennsylvania governor. The Maryland governor talked about patriotism, and the Pennsylvania governor talked about freedom. So basically, and this is something that came out in this really nice article in Axios, political reporter Alexi McCammon, just recently on December 12th, actually last month. So there was an idea, and this is actually a really nice quote from senior Liz Smith, a senior advisor to Pete Buttigieg 2020 campaign. There was an idea that Republicans own the value of freedom. So we should just go out there and talk about other values that people more closely associate with Democrats. They couldn't have been more wrong, and I totally agree with her. So now this is another task, right? Staying out of the mud pit, okay? The GOPs are constantly creating mud pits. So this is something from Anat Shenker-Osorio, framing guru, and she has ASO Communications. ASO is the initials of her name. Progressive messages often lead with no and don't. We often start with anger, we start with fear. We rely on fear and anger, reactive emotions. To sustain long-term movements, we must shift from cataloging what we're resisting to painting a desirable portrait of the world we seek. All right, so now when let's say we're at Thanksgiving table, right? And Uncle Bob, who watches Fox, comes up with something like the earth is flat, right? So we talked about this during the last workshop, right? We Democrats pretty much have to assume that our default response will be counterproductive and will get us into a GOP mud pit, okay? We just pretty much have to assume that. This is the kinds of things that we tend to say, okay? Everybody knows the earth is not flat, right? There's been no concerted effort by the government to silence and punish conservatives. Public school teachers are not trying to make a white child feel bad. Dems are not politicizing gun violence. All this stuff, right? So this is toxic language. Negation is toxic, okay? So not only, and this is from George Lakoff himself in Don't Think of an Elephant, not only does negating a frame activates that frame, but the more it's activated, the stronger it gets. So you should say what you believe using your language, not theirs. So in other words, we need to stop, and and what George Green talks about this. We stop, you drop basically what your instinct tells you to say, and you reframe. So, and the best way to reframe is to tie a response to freedom. Say what you're for, and then call out the other side for dividing and scapegoating just to harm fellow Americans and weaken the nation, okay? So for instance, I am for XYZ because I believe, right? And then, tying it to freedom, it would be amazing. But there are other values as well, right? All right, only inexperienced Republicans.
Federico,
Yeah.
before we get too much further,
Yeah.
if you don't mind, I noticed that Lillian Brooks has her hand raised.
Oh, her hand, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Do you have a
Yes,
question? Yeah,
yes.
go ahead.
The Republicans have a good way of framing their thoughts. I noticed their on their banners and things like that, they say freedom, faith, and family.
Right.
And that says a lot to people. And it seems to me the Democrats need to frame what you've told us just now in very short words,
Yeah.
as to say what our beliefs are. I mean, they've already taken over the freedom, so we're going to have to be creative, in my estimation, about having I don't know what you would call it, a theme
Right.
that's constantly repeated over and over again, and in our signs, everywhere you look, that kind of thing. And it's got to be brief. It can't be big explanations about what freedom means.
A
Yeah.
That's all I'm
slogan.
saying.
Because if I may say something just very briefly, I like what you said. Now just keep in mind, the research basically shows that freedom is the core American value that most everyone can connect to, relate to. So there are other values that we can use, but freedom is the one that everyone can relate to. It's just you can
Okay.
connect with freedom.
Well, the
Yep.
Republicans already figured that out. So we're going to have to be, because that's in their motto, freedom, faith, and family. And so all I'm saying is that, I mean, we could use it, but maybe we need to use different terms to express who we are and what we believe in, and have a motto like they're doing.
Yeah, no, a motto would be fantastic. Yeah, with three core values. Yeah, that would be fantastic. Yeah, but I really believe that freedom needs to be part of it.
Okay.
Front and center. We're
So-
going to talk more. We're going to talk about messaging that includes more about freedom. So we will talk about it more. Go ahead.
I don't know how to raise my hand right now, but my question is, can you take something back? Can you take back a value? Can you take back a message that is already being used effectively by somebody else?
But excellent question. And this is something, that I remember when I was back in 2005, I was training on all these things. I was training folks in elected officials in Arlington. And I talked about how this word were the two words that were toxic. I said, just please avoid using tax relief, because it triggers something in the brain that goes against everything we believe. And then the next thing I see, it's a few weeks later, one of them was running in his campaign, included tax relief for middle class. And we cannot, in both in terms of values and talk and keywords, you cannot take them back. Once one side has make them their own, you can't take them back. We need to find our own words. But freedom is a core American value that we all believe in, and we all love this country, and that's we're gonna have to we have to talk about it. Yeah.
So are you saying that we just need another word that means freedom, since they've already absconded the word freedom?
I don't think so. I think we can use freedom too. The one that I would caution people try to avoid a little bit, and it's liberty, because liberty is really more associated with right-wing causes. But sometimes it's, I use it too, but no, I think we're gonna have to use freedom in some, but I want to move on if you guys don't mind.
Well,
I
we've
have
got
one, I have a quick
Susan,
question.
Susan, Ray, and Russell.
Go
So,
ahead, go ahead.
Susan,
Okay, and I feel very strongly about this. I think we're talking about polling and data points, and we're not using the advantage we have of the fact that this country invented democracy, and it was the values that are have to do with the founding of this country are democratic values. And we have in the Republicans a resurgence of autocracy, resurgence of the feudalism.
Yep.
And I say this having watched on PBS the series recently on Ben Franklin, which was I really, if you should donate to PBS and get it on Passport and watch it. It's incredible. And one of the things that I think he contextualizes freedom in a more sophisticated way than any of the political discussion these days. And I think there's a lot to be gotten from the way, in writing the Declaration of Independence, he and Thomas Jefferson wordsmithed it. They looked, they went, it became really clear that the work of building freedom requires everyone in a democracy to understand what a democracy is and what it takes to maintain a democracy, and that there is a freedom to work together for a good outcome, whether that's being wealthy, so that it isn't just freedom, put the cloak on. It's freedom to do, to live, to create a better life for the next generation.
Freedom
And
to
upward
thrive.
mobility is a huge, that did not exist in Europe. You were a peasant or you were royalty. We invented that. And there's just a lot more depth. I think it would do us well to spend some time immersed in that and see, and the buzzwords come after you've done all that homework. And I'm not dismissing any other technique. I'm just struck that we have this incredible history we're not resonating with.
And and we should talk more about history, and we should talk more about our founding fathers. And
There's some
absolutely.
great, unbelievable, their personal stories are incredible. Each one of them was Greta Thunberg, encouraged.
Yeah, that's true.
so we've got Ray and then Russell. Ray, if you want to unmute yourself, you still have a question or comment.
Yeah, I would say just a point as far as, well, first of all, freedom is a core value, certainly of the Democratic Party and a core value of the United States from our founding. And so something we cannot cede to anybody. I think the difference is that from the GOP's viewpoint and the conservative viewpoint and the fascist viewpoint, authoritarian, they think in terms of individual freedom. And in terms of anybody could have the freedom not to wear a mask, even if it causes somebody else to get sick and die. And just on a more global scale, that Germany's had one freedom for Lebensraum. So they conquered Czechoslovakia, they conquered other countries to get bigger and bigger. And on an individual viewpoint, I was taught that, from early on about freedom, one thing about freedom is that your freedom to extend your arm, extend your fist, stops at my nose. So, but the GOP, it's like everything goes. This is like they're all a bunch of wild ass Vikings, or barbarians. We do whatever the hell we want. If you don't like it, tough shit, And so that's what we have to fight against. And but it's tied so much into fairness and to I hate to use the word collective because then they sounds like communist, but it's collective freedom. It's our freedom to vote.
Yeah,
our freedom
true.
to worship as a group, and freedom from fear and everything that all that FDR had so eloquently stated. All right.
Yeah,
that's all I have.
yeah. There's a lot we need to learn from FDR speeches, actually, in terms of talking about freedom.
Let's hear from Russell, and then I'd like, give Federico a chance to continue on. So, Russell, if you still have a comment.
Thank you. To answer the question that was raised earlier about whether you can reclaim values, I think the answer is unquestionably yes. We can come up with different slogans, mottos, phrases to convey values, but you don't concede values. You don't concede patriotism, freedom, etc. to the other side. I think that has been a democratic problem since the era of Nixon and how he characterized Democrats as being counterculture, as being not proud of America. And I think that has carried on since that time, that Democrats are seen as being unpatriotic, as not being proud of their country. You see that raised consistently in campaigns. And I think those politicians, whether we're talking about the two governors you mentioned, or even the campaign of Tim Ryan, who lost, unfortunately, in Ohio, but did much better than people expected. And that was because he was able to connect with people. He was able to connect with them on their level. He didn't come across as a technocrat. They didn't see him as someone who was better than them. They didn't see him as somebody who was totally out of the mainstream. That's how Republicans want to characterize us, and we succeed when we don't allow them to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Well, don't mind.
I could continue. Then
continue on, and Susan and Chen, you'll be first up in the next section where we can talk, if that's okay with you all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So just this is only as inexperienced Republicans use negation. Okay, usually when you say A is not B, people, the way the brain works, they just sort of skip through the not, and so A equals B. So here's George Santos, poor guy, on Twitter, right, or whatever. I'm not sure what he said. I'm not a fraud. I'm not a criminal. But anyway, so I sent out this tweet, right? Given their track record, can any GOP politician be trusted? Vote. So it's just basically the choice is clear: Democratic moral clarity, morally bankrupt GOP. So the problem with, I sent it. I thought, it would be good, but the truth is that I did what I'm telling people not to do, which is I'm trashing the other side when we don't have a brand ourselves, So which is also a little tricky, So to me, the most important thing is for us Democrats to convey that we stand for freedom for all, not just for a lucky few, and that we love this country as much as anyone does, and people, so we need to talk about these things. So anyway, so I'm gonna move on. So with this is something I talked about in the last workshop too, but basically what the GOP mud pit, right? They want to try to get us in the mud, right? So they want us fighting in their terms, right? Using their words, right? They want us talking in terms of, safe and legal abortion. They talk, I don't know how many weeks, whatever, 16 weeks, and whether there is a heartbeat or not, or, so they want us down in this, in the mud, basically. And we need to stay right above it, basically. We need to define the issue of reproductive freedom the right way. And we're going to talk about that in a little later. But so when people feel, this is something that's important to know about GOP communication strategy. When people feel fear or insecurity, they're easily pulled into a GOP-fueled scarcity mindset. This basically a zero-sum game, where they turn inwards, people turn inwards and try to conserve what's theirs and willing to expand their moral universe, basically, beyond what's known and what feels safe and familiar. So scarcity and fear tend to drive how most Americans currently form their views on immigration. So anyway, as Anat Senker-Osorio says, we need to sell the brownie, not the recipe on the box, the brownie. And that's what Antonia calls the why. So we need to get people off the everyone for themselves mindset and foster an interconnectedness mindset. Together we're making progress. This is Frameworks Institute. So I'm going to move on here. This is something that George Green said that I like. If you're conveying too many facts, statistics, policies, stuff, you're likely not using proper framing. So these are some techniques here. We need to favor anecdotes over facts, metaphors over statistics and poll results, stories over policy stuff, wonky stuff. We need a good leader over a qualified leader. Now, this is Shapiro, Governor Shapiro of Pennsylvania, okay? So while addressing reporters at the Democratic Governors Association, he, in December, he said freedom 14 times in his 5-minute opening remarks, okay? And Maryland Governor Wes Moore used patriot or patriotism 7 times in his, okay? These folks get it, okay? So Shapiro said, freedom isn't telling women what they're allowed to do with their bodies, Freedom isn't telling people they can work a 40-hour work week, but can't be a member of a union. Freedom, sure as hell, isn't telling people that they can vote, but some politician is going to pick the winner. So things to say. I wish, what we need to be doing is defining freedom. What he's doing is, he's saying what freedom is not, but I kind of wish we would say what freedom is. But in any case, this is progress. This is awesome language from now a Pennsylvania governor. Message structure. Okay, we talked about this last time, but it's worth reviewing, and then I have new stuff. Okay, so example of properly framed messages. But first, we're going to talk about traditional democratic messaging. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to show you, new and improved or properly framed messaging. And then I want to watch a video, some political ads and that are properly framed. And I would love for you to try to identify the different parts of the message structure. Okay, so this is what Anat Senker-Osorio talks about. We need to move from AHA to SPS. Okay, so a lot of our messages start with anger, trigger fear. Okay, and then we move to hope and then action. Okay, and what we need to do is move to lead with shared values. Try to find common ground right there, shared values. Then you define the problem, and then you give a solution. So the other way of looking at it is, so you start with shared values, then you name the villain and the violation of the values, and then you give a positive vision for America. Okay, so this is basically a traditional democratic message that I showed last time. Okay, corporations have been jacking up prices for consumers all years. Democrats passed legislation to lower costs and make corporations pay what they owe in taxes. The Inflation Reduction Act allows Medicare to negotiate, blah, blah, blah. Every single Republicans voted against it. Also, it's fully paid for, lowers the deficit. So now, here's where we give a little bit of hope. right? So we start with anger, then we give a little bit of hope. Fortunately, we have a Democratic candidate running in your district who supports the Inflation Reduction Act, okay? And then we end with action, okay? Will Joe Blow count with your vote this November, okay? So that could be, you know, by canvassing or phone banking, okay? So here's another one, okay? Anger, hope, action, okay? Republicans are the only thing standing in the way of solutions other developed countries have implemented to nearly eliminate mass shootings. Then we give a little bit of hope. Fortunately, we have a Democratic candidate running your district who wants to pass common sense laws to keep guns out of the dangerous criminals. And then, you know, will this candidate count with your vote this November? Okay, so a lot of people ask, you know, why is it that the other side can lead with anger and fear, and why is it that we Democrats cannot? Right? There is a reason. I will go over it later. Okay. Now this is a letter I got from Virginia Democratic Party, which you know, there's room for lots of improvement here. But so the letter starts, you know, to no one's surprise and to the dismay of decent thinking Republicans, you know, so right there. So there's some, so this is the most important thing that they're, you know, Democratic Party of Virginia is telling me. There are some decent thinking Republicans out there. Donald Trump has announced he's running for president. His president was a stain that Biden and Harris and Democrats across the country are still working, trying to remove. Okay, so we're sort of the cleaning crew. But I like the use of metaphorical language, you know, the stain, and it's good to use metaphors. I'm not sure would have picked that one if I wrote this myself. But anyway, so it starts with again anger and fear, and then yeah, and so yeah, it's and then at the end, you know, will you chip in $250, $100, 50, 35 today? You know, by the way, it uses some language that's also kind of like graduate level, you know, which I don't use very often, and frankly, the second word like that I don't understand, and this letter goes in the recycling bin. You know, I mean, like we're talking about, you know, Trump and his right-wing sycophants. You know, I'm not even sure what that means. But and then down here, talking about how the MAGA, you know, we will not let the MAGA party infer in our lives. I don't know what they mean by infer, you know, but anyway, so yeah, by that point, this would end up in the recycle bin. But lots of room for improvement. Now, this is the new and improved message structure. Okay, and so we start with shared value. Okay, so Americans value our freedoms. By the way, it's freedoms plural works better than singular, because singular is a little more associated with right-wing causes. So I get time back to something one of you said. But Trump Republicans or MAGA Republicans want to take away freedom from all who do not look, live, and love like them. From freedom to decide if and when to grow our families, to freedom to vote, to freedom for our families to thrive. Trump Republicans want to control us, use violence to overthrow elections, and block the policies we favor. So in that section is they basically use shared values to connect issues. So we're connecting issues there. And then we reinforce the power of the people. We end with a positive vision. Okay, Americans must join together across race, place, and party, protect our freedoms. In 2020, we defeated Trump. This November, we will defeat Trumpism. Okay. So anyway, this is another one I showed last time. Also, this one from Anat Shenker. Sorry. In America, we value our freedoms and do all we can to provide for our families. But Trump Republicans let corporations gouge prices and dodge taxes while they block laws to make health and childcare more affordable, so they can divide, distract. So anyway, and then this November, our freedoms are on the ballot. And then we end with a positive, you know, we need to join together to elect leaders who will protect our freedoms and ensure we can care for our families and decide for our futures. Okay. So essentially, it's basically, the vision and the values and villain vision is sort of an abbreviated version of this, because there's, as you can see, there is one other element, which is the use freedom to connect issues. So then this is this is a new one that I put together from basically it's about how basically MAGA hijacked control of the U.S. House, right? So across races, places, and parties, I can't remember where I got this from, but anyway, across races, places, and parties, Americans who saw the 2022 election as a choice between freedom and fascism voted to protect our families and our futures, and Democrats held the Senate and key state houses. But by creating barriers to voting and dividing us into districts serving greedy, power-grabbing ambitions, the same Trumpist politicians who engaged in a criminal conspiracy to overthrow the will of the people on January 6th hijacked control of the U.S. House. And with it, the power to block what our families need, wreak havoc on the economy, and peddle their propaganda through sham, harmful hearings from the House floor. The 2023-24 elections will show that when Americans understand freedom is on the line, we fight to extend the promise of liberty and justice for all, to all. And we know this fight is far from over. Okay, so as we discussed earlier, I'm a little concerned about the MAGA, having control of the U.S. House and the whole, I hate for the nation to go into a debt default. It would be horrible. So anyway, no matter what we look like, where we come from, or what our what our party, most of us believe for democracy to work for all of us, it must include us all. So, but Trumpist MAGA Republicans seize control of the U.S. House. That's another good word, seize control. They didn't win. They seized control of the U.S. House by silencing the voices of Black, brown, and young and new Americans in order to rule for the wealthy few. Then here there are three options basically that we could use for the positive vision at the end to close. So just as generations of us defeated enslavers, segregationists, women's suffrage deniers, marriage equality destroyers, and Trump himself, we will defeat Trumpism and fight for liberty and justice for all. Then there are other options there. As we've seen from Seneca Falls to Selma and from Stonewall to Standing Rock, at every turn, we have defeated the authoritarian faction that denies our rights and rules for the wealthy white few. Now, once again, it's up to Americans who believe in freedom for all, no matter our races, backgrounds, or genders, to make this a country where we, the people, decide who governs in our name. And then the last option is by joining together to protect our freedoms and rewrite the rules, we can continue the legacy of those who fought to make this a place of liberty and justice for all, and ensure our communities thrive for the next 10 years and the generations that follow. So, I saw some hands raised. Go ahead.
Tim, why don't you go ahead, and then we'll hear from Doug, and then Russell, and then we'll let Federico continue. It's 8:15 now, so go ahead, Tim.
Okay. My comment is that it seems like we are fighting against two systems. There is our moral system, our democratic system, and I tie all of those two things together. But there's also the system of capitalism. And the principles of capitalism does not support our democratic values. And my question and concern is, how do we expose the Republicans who seem to wave that flag against the benefits, the values, and freedom of all Americans?
You mean the flag of capitalism
The
or?
flag of capitalism, which opposes our freedom. It takes away our freedom, and their actions and their beliefs goes against the beliefs of the LGBTQ community, it goes against women's rights. All of the things that we have fought for over the last 50 years seems to be going in a backward mode in the name of capitalism.
Well, I mean, in terms
So
of,
how do we expose that? And I guess my question is, how do we expose, because for me, Republicans are being very a fraud in their messaging. And
right,
so I see the fraudulence of their message. And so I don't
yes,
buy into it because of that. How do we expose that? Because everybody may not see that.
right. Yeah, I mean, that's really like talking about capitalism is a topic for a whole other, but I mean, clearly we can always talk about, the huge inequality that we have, and the importance for raising the minimum wage and, the importance of just to try to, get, more equality, if you would, for all, but it's the thing is that the other side is, I think they've become over the years very cocky. They feel invincible, and that's because of the language advantage they have, and they've been working on a moral brand, and trashing our moral brand since the early 80s. And so a moral brand, I think I see it as sort of a shield, with you could, when you don't have that shield, anything they throw at you, things will stick. They're Republicans talking about Democrats as pedophiles, and mostly it's, so I think the priority, is really for all of us to talk more to think more in terms of values, and to talk more in terms of our values, and to build that democratic moral brand. And then, I think then we can discuss other issues, but there is, I don't know, anybody else has any thoughts?
I would just like for us to get off the defense position, and we stay in a defensive posture with the attacks from Republicans. And I don't feel that we need to be defensive around what we believe in. And
Yeah.
And I think that we should be very confident and strong, and that we should fight back. We have fought world wars in order to protect our freedom. And yet I don't see us fighting within the enemies within our own country to protect the freedoms of the people of this country.
I agree. That, and some of this, in the last, there's, you can also, think about Democratic politicians, elected officials, right? I think, there's some who believe, we all know Republicans are basically part of a morally bankrupt cult, right? But and they have no spine at all. And, but some people think, Democrats are sort of the spineless, but the truth is that if they don't have the tools to, so in other words, we really shouldn't talk about them lacking a spine. At the grassroots level, we should give them a spine. And the way we do it is by building a democratic moral brand, by talking about in terms of liberty and justice for all, by framing that way. That's when our, democratic representatives will stand up for things. They've been doing a lot actually, but they'll stand up even more. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
If we could hear from Doug and then Russell, and then move along, if that's okay. So go ahead, Doug. Can't hear you, Doug.
Maybe he's muted. No. should we move on to the next person? I'm just thinking.
Sure, go with Russell.
Sorry.
Hi. When I look at this page, I have to ask the question, who are we addressing this to? If polls are correct and roughly 40% of Americans are Democrats and roughly 40% or so of Americans are Republicans, who are we selling this page to? I don't think you have any disagreement among Democrats that we believe in these things. This is not going to convince any Republicans, and it's questionable about the independents. So we're going to talk about our communication strategy. I think we have to figure out who are we addressing our messages to and whether they will be effective. Because if this is intended to rally Democrats, maybe it will work, but that doesn't necessarily mean it will be enough to win an election. And what we have to be about is how do we win? And I don't think this does it, frankly, okay? I think we have to have messages that work to persuade people, not just get the people who are already on our side to feel better about themselves. We have to figure out a way to persuade people if we're going to win elections. And so when I look at this page, I'm sorry, I don't think you're doing it.
Yeah, I respectfully disagree. As far as the audience, I think we need to talk to, there's always this debate in campaigns in terms of strategic communication. Do we focus more, emphasize persuasion, aim more at swing voters, or mobilization, focus more on the base? I really think that we need to do both, but the base is key. The base needs all these words. The base needs to hear this type of language, and then they need to spread it, and that's frankly how the other side does it. They hear this, their key language at Fox and Breitbart, and then they disseminate everywhere they go, and so we need to do the same. Yeah, and really, values centered messaging works, and so persuasion, the traditional persuasion is really fact-based persuasion, right? So let's hear these facts in a logical order, and so we aim it at someone, and so this should do the trick, really. But like say for instance, when you go canvassing, right? You picked up a sheet with talking points, right? And it's usually all the statistics and things which they're even hard to remember. It's much easier to remember, that we Democrats stand for liberty and justice for all, than to remember, all the things that candidate got accomplished, or I mean, it's yeah. Anyway, anybody else has a comment?
Is my mic working now?
Yeah, I can hear it.
Great. Yeah, I kind of agree with some of what Russell said, but I also agree with what you just said about that there are two different audiences, right? There's the base and there's the persuadable. I mean, just to simplify things. But I guess I struggle with, because to me, I think about this messaging more about the reaching out to the persuadables or the decent, reasonable Republicans, as referred to in the Virginia mailer that you had a few slides ago. And I actually personally appreciate that when it's not framed as like, oh, I think you used the phrase that Republicans are part of a I forget what it was, some kind of a cult, basically, though. Now, and it's just like, when I hear that, I'm like, yeah, I know there's the far right, you really vocal, really nut jobby, type of folks that get all the air in the media and everything. But I also have a lot of Republican neighbors, and they aren't part of any cult, and they don't believe like those really ridiculous things that you see on TV and that, and everything. They're much more reasoned, right? But when we frame things that way, you drive them right out, right? Because you basically leave no room for engagement or for them to like you basically have to like reject your own side, or else you're part of it, right? Is the framing. It's too binary, I guess, is what I'm getting at. And anyway, so there are certain parts of this that are resonating with me, but there are parts I'm struggling with. The one other one I wanted to mention was and it kind of tests what you're just talking about of facts-based versus values-based arguments. And you talked about earlier about like anecdotes rather than data. And that's another one where for me, when I hear politicians start, well, you know, my neighbor, he lost his job to some immigrant. That's an anecdote, right? And then the next neighbor is like, well, really? Well, my you know, immigrant friend started a small business and hired 20 people. There's a competing anecdote. Like, who cares? Like, you know, like that doesn't, like, what I want to know is the data. Like, do immigrants contribute more to the economy than they are taking away? Like, but you can frame that fact and a values-based argument. And I think you need to do both rather than just, you know, rely on anecdotes and just rely on, I think that it all matters, and you got to put it together. And like you're saying, you got to tailor it to the audience you're trying to reach. There's not like a one size fits all here.
And if I may, on that point, we have to remember that we've got a certain luxury here in Northern Virginia where typically Democrats win with 60% of the vote, but in parts of Western Loudoun, Western or Fauquier and Western Prince William and Stafford County and those areas between here and or between Prince William County and Richmond, those are precincts and districts that are gettable, but it needs this sort of language that Federico is describing to convince heretofore Republican voters to switch sides, and using this moral language that they will identify, because you know what? They probably go to church and they hear moral language there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of the cue that the Republicans are doing. They're copying preachers and repetition and what the preachers say. And of course, morals. We don't like the morals, but anyway. So that's my 2 cents. And Federico, if you want to continue, if that's okay with everyone, and we'll have a discussion towards the end.
Can I just say real quick that we are not the average voters, and we may like statistics. I love statistics, facts, but we're not the average voters. And think of any of the Republican slogans that have facts and figures. None, but their slogans work, they motivate, they excite, they anger.
Exactly.
Yeah, good point.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. I mean, and I get it that there are good Republicans out there, but Frank, they need to speak up. They need to speak up because and some do. Look at the Lincoln Project. And others they are, but more need to speak up for what the GOP is doing to this country is horrible. So. But I agree that there's not good to talk about, and I never do talk about Republicans. I talk about, MAGA Republicans or, Republican politicians, So we don't want to alienate the Republican voter. Yeah, that I would agree with. But this whole sort of resisting this moderate instinct, to just let's seek common ground. How do you seek common ground with the people who instigated the January 6th attack? I mean, anyway, it's
I think what you're giving us is a way to focus on winning.
on winning.
Focusing
Exactly.
on fighting. I think the thing that's going to bring Republicans around is losing.
Yes.
I mean, we've got to keep our eyes on that prize. And the thing that, I mean, in my volunteer work, the thing that everyone emphasizes is get out the vote, which is talking to the people who already share your values and getting them to actually go to the polls. It's not persuasion at this juncture. And I'm hearing the same thing from you, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Yeah, that's true. And it's not, it's and I want to get this this former Republicans on our side. I want to get them on our side, but to them our brand is toxic, and so So unless we build a good democratic moral brand, you know, and we talk about things like liberty and justice for all, you know, you know, I'm not sure we're gonna get, they're just gonna sit out on elections, but you know, we need to grow our party, and we need to bring the disaffected Republicans too on our side, and we'll do it by talking in terms of values. You know, I mean, look at you know, Bernie Sanders. I mean, there's a lot of people who like him and like Trump. You know, I mean, it's like, but anyway, so I'm gonna continue if you guys don't mind. So this one we talked about it last time, right? In America, so the same sort of message structure, right? In America, voters pick our leaders. Our leaders should not pick which voters to hear and which to silence, okay? But Trump Republicans, blah, 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 by electing leaders who will protect our freedoms to decide our own futures and demanding that election officials count every vote, we will ensure the will of the people prevails. Dems will ensure we move forward together to make this a place where our rights are respected and our freedoms are protected. So this is more, you're talking about public safety. I'm gonna move on. So anyway, so let me show you an ad, okay? And then if you don't mind, just tell me, I'd like to see you identify the message structure, okay? So we're gonna start with freedom to learn, which is the right-wing attacks on our public schools, okay? So let me see if I remember how to do this. Let me see. So just a second. So I have to. Hold on a second. Oh, new share. Okay, I see. Can everyone see the, I don't know what happened here. Oh, there we go. Can everyone see the YouTube video?
Yeah, but we got that sort of gray rectangle up at the top.
Oh, yeah. I got you.
It's that.
Ooh.
Gen Z brought us TikTok, mom jeans, and this word. But there are bigger
Actually,
It's audio,
trends
no
we can thank
video.
them for. Passionate activism, better awareness.
what was that? I'm sorry.
It was audio, no video, and the bar is now at the bottom.
Oh, okay. Hold on one second. But let me just see. Let me just do another. But the audio comes through. Can you hear the audio?
Very clear audio.
We
Okay,
teach
beautiful.
kids to dream big for their future.
That's better if you can get
To
rid
be
of the
the
bar at the
next
bottom.
Jane Goodall, the next Oprah, the next Sonia Sotomayor. But now kids have learned they don't have to wait, and they're making our future better. Let's have their backs. Fight for great public schools for all.
Anywhere you go in America, French fries taste just as good.
Yeah,
But
that's-
some lawmakers
Yeah. So, okay. So, unfortunately, I'm not seeing the message structure very much, but let me try.
All kids should be free to pursue their dreams, whether
Okay.
that's to be a firefighter.
Okay, see, now we're starting with a share value. Okay, can everyone see this one?
Yeah, we can see it. The bar is the gray. Oh, good. It's reduced a little.
Let me start from the. Hold on a second. Let me start from the get-go. Okay.
All kids should be free to pursue their dreams, whether that's to be a firefighter, a chef, or an online fitness star. Forest creature? Why not? Okay, that doesn't seem viable, but you get the point. The freedom to live your dreams starts with safe, welcoming schools, where all kids can thrive and be celebrated for who they are. Fight for schools that respect every child.
Things have changed since the 1950s. But some things.
Okay. So, I mean, has everyone seen the? See if I can. Has everyone notice the structure, the message structure. Let me try another. Let me try this one. This video, okay?
No matter our race, region, or religion, we don't just want to make a good living, we want to make a great life. And to make this a place where we can flourish, we have to make sure our voices are heard. But today, a powerful few try to divide us by race and by place. So we won't join together to demand our communities to be healthy, our voices to be heard, and our rights to be respected. By showing up as voters, we have the power to get the care, respect, and quality jobs that every one of us deserves. Together, we make the future. As voters, we deliver Black dreams. We'll swear in new leaders who govern for all of us, no exceptions.
Anger, action, hope just turned around.
Black folks deserve a government that represents the best of who we are.
Okay, so anyway, I think let's go back to the presentation. But do you get?
Let's Federico. It's we're at 8:09 or 8:38. So.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay, okay. But was anyone able to see the message structure in a couple of these?
Anger, action, hope just mixed around.
Or starting with shared values, nobody could dispute.
Yeah, I think the one or two we saw were definitely started with shared values. Yeah. So yeah, there was one that started with anger. Yeah, that's true. I agree. But anyway, so I just wanted to show you that. There was one thing I wanted to show you, but I don't know. I know we're over in time. Do folks want to keep going a little bit? I want to get to Antonia Scatton's value dichotomies of Democrats, just to raise awareness about that. Do we have a few more minutes?
Well, you can maybe introduce that and then pick it up on February 1st.
Okay, sure. That sounds good.
How about if those that want to stay on, those that don't, leave?
Yeah, absolutely. You're free to go. You're free to go, folks. Okay. So I'm just gonna move forward fast here. Okay. So this is something to practice. So we start with shared values, then we name the villain. These are sentence starters, basically. Okay. And focusing on.
I think you need to go back to your PowerPoint, maybe.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Okay. Can everyone see vision and action? Can everyone see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. So these are sentence starters, and focusing on freedom to learn. Okay. So it's about our public schools. Okay. So we have of course it start with shared values, and then name the villain and the violation of the values, and then vision and action to close. Okay. But we're gonna skip all of that. And I was going to practice with gun violence, and so I was going to ask you to come up with a message for secure gun storage, but we'll have to leave that for next time. Although this is hot in the enrichment at the Virginia Legislature, so General Assembly. But so I'm going to move, and also have reproductive freedom. So this is just FYI, these are words that ASO Communication recommends with regards to the U.S. House and what's going on there. Okay, so they seized control of the House. They didn't win the House. Okay, so they took control. They're recommending anti-American as opposed to un-American. Trump is Republican or MAGA Republican as opposed to extremist Republicans. Okay. So anyway, this is someone in the last workshop asked about memes. And so I found some memes here that can go with some messaging based on these tips and do's and don'ts to put in social media. But yeah, so for instance, on this one, frame dysfunction in the House as Trumpism versus Trumpism. So there is no team normal. Yeah. So anyway, in some of this is kind of nice, so 3 F's: freedom, family, future. Okay. We were talking about three values that, would be great to have 3 values that define who we are as Democrats. Right. Yeah, so this, do it. So they're recommending, do go on the offense, take the high moral ground, and lean into the values of freedom, family, and future. Center the voters and we the people. Don't engage in the 3-ring circus or get into process or get into hypocrisy arguments. Okay, just take the high moral ground. So yes, just about corruption. These are different kinds of sentence starters. I'm going to move. We're going to look at do you guys have a moment just for one political ad before we get to? It's a really good one because it's actually Dan Pfeiffer had in his show an ad Schenker Osorio talk and to analyze ads. And so they analyze a Democratic ad and they do a really good job because it illustrates what I'm talking about, message structure. So I'll just play it. Let's see, 7:30. There we go. Let's see if I can do a new share and
that truly matters for each and every one of us.
The first ad we're going to watch is from.
Can everyone hear the video?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So I'm going to move to 7 minutes, 7:30. All right.
The next ad we're going to watch is from John King, who served as President Barack Obama's Secretary of Education and is now running for governor of Maryland.
School curricula have become openly racist. Critical race theory is bigoted. It is a lie.
Some far-right politicians want to erase my story. The truth is, my ancestors who were enslaved in this cabin in Gaithersburg, Maryland, were part of building this country. The truth is, today's gaps in health, wealth, and criminal justice are tied to the history of slavery, segregation, and redlining. And the truth is, my family went from being enslaved in that cabin to serving in the cabinet of our nation's first Black president. As a teacher, school principal, and President Obama's Secretary of Education, I know the truth matters. We're strong enough to acknowledge injustice and see the power of progress. I know that Maryland's future depends on the strength of our public schools. It was amazing teachers who saved my life when both of my parents passed away. It couldn't be a better time to have an educator as governor, and that's our truth.
And for some context for viewers, John King is running in a primary, and it is assumed but not presumed that the winner of that primary will be the overwhelming favorite to be the next governor of Maryland. What did you think of this ad as a form of offense in this new discourse around education?
So folks, so the one who's about to speak, this is Anat Schenker Osorio, the one that I've been quoting so much throughout this presentation, okay? And she mentions message structure here.
It's
Okay.
about how to talk to people,
What was that again?
being a Democrat.
Yes, yeah. So here's her analysis of that particular ad, okay?
All of the pieces of a very good ad in the wrong order.
Oh, interesting. I'd like to hear why.
So that ad opens with a recitation of the opposition. That is a bad idea. The recitation of the opposition is an important thing to do. It needs to be sandwiched in between what we stand for. Where it should have begun is with the line that he used about himself, which was roughly speaking, not verbatim, as an educator, as former education secretary, I know the truth. So you begin there with his unique perspective, his understanding, and then you introduce the villains as a counterpoint to that, thereby making the bad things that they're doing all the more terrible because it is held up against the contrast with the desirable thing that the candidate is doing and saying.
So for all of the Democrats who are not yet,
I'm sorry, what was that? Okay, yeah, I'll continue.
running aggressive advertising pushes, what does the strongest Democratic message on education look like in the context of the political environment Republicans have created with their massive media megaphone?
Yeah, so it's first and foremost stating what the vast majority of American voters believe, which is that they actually do want kids to be taught the truth, quote, the good and bad of our history. So in a messaging form, what that sounds like is most of us want our kids to be taught the truth about our past so they can understand our present and create a better future. But today, my opponent, but today, name the person, but today, certain Republicans want to spread lies. They seek to ban books, but we know better. We know our kids are courageous enough to learn both the good and bad of our history, and that they deserve fully funded schools that are places that we would want any of our children to learn. So that's not copy edited, but basically you say the kind of education that you actually do want, and then you portray them as the contrast, but you make sure that you ascribe motivation. So you don't just say what they are saying, but you give the underlying reason why. And that underlying reason is that they know they don't have an education agenda. They know that their education agenda, quote unquote, is to take everything that our public schools need and to harm our kids in the process. And they're hoping to cover for it.
Well, Democratic campaigns, I not just did the work for you, take it, snip this.
Okay. All right, folks. So, that's, does anybody have any comment about that?
I felt the first ad worked for me. I'd have
Yeah.
to see it juxtaposed against the proposed second one.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, when you start with shared values, you really, I mean, like in any conversation, when you build a bridge at the beginning, you know,
I know.
you can make more of a difference, really. I think more impact.
One of the points is look at who's here. We're really strong Democrats.
Yeah, again.
Democrat. I'm trying in my little brain to look at people who identify themselves not as Republicans anymore, but as conservatives. So how do I reach the person? I put it in the chat. Anyway, it's a long story, but the short story is I was introduced to a Republican authorized representative, and she said, "Hi, I'm a conservative." And I went, that told me something. So she is the person I want to reach, not somebody who says I'm a Republican, because as my husband says, the Republicans, and he was one, is not what the Republican Party is now. I want to reach a person who's willing to identify themselves as a conservative. So I got to remember that person, which ain't me.
Yeah, you're so right.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm gonna put in the chat some of the resources that are great. But anyone else has a comment?
I have a question. Would it be possible to go back and look at the reframing of the reproductive rights ads, or you've had a couple of screens that you were talking about reproductive rights, because I'm totally involved in that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Could you just, go back to your presentation?
Yeah.
Went through it really quickly.
Yeah, let me do that. Hold on one sec. Can you see my presentation, my slides?
Right. Just go to the ones on reproductive freedom. Yes,
Yeah.
here, framing. If I could just make a slide of it so that I
Yeah.
can then work with
Yeah,
it
yeah.
later. Okay.
Yeah.
Was there another one?
Yeah. So so protect our freedoms. This was a big campaign during the 2022 election season from Anat Shenker-Osorio. So let me just see. Oh, it's not going forward. Let me see. What am I doing? There we go. So yeah, so these are basically like three different ones that I put together. So one I picked from Drew Weston, Democratic consultant. He's the one who came up with that a great book that talks about how people vote on feelings, right? And so he had a guide right around the time of the Roe v. Wade, situation, and so anyways, reproductive freedom, healthcare, so are all about freedom as citizens to decide whether and with whom to have a family. Full stop. So so anyway, that right-wing politicians have their faith and values, but we believe in the freedom to make our own decisions based on our own faith and values. So as we know so anyway, so number two, I'm not asking for anyone to change religious beliefs, but the decision of when or if to become a parent is very important and deeply personal. I am fighting for a country where Americans are free to dream their best life, to live it and to thrive. The freedom to decide if and when to have children is fundamental to ensuring that women are equal and full participants in society. Instead of harming women, their families and communities by criminalizing safe and legal abortion and eventually birth control, GOP politicians should join Democrats in proudly protecting human life from deadly gun and racial violence, tearing apart countless American families and communities. Democrats' commitments to protecting human life and families became even clearer during COVID. Always vote and always vote Democratic. And then number three is a pregnant person in consultation with personal family or doctor must be able to make the best possible reproductive decisions. Right-wing politicians should stay out of it. So this is something really cool that Antonia Scatton did in one of the trainings I attended. So it was all about asking questions. And so of course, the first question, you're talking to someone, maybe you're canvassing, and so, who, is unsure about Roe v. Wade. And one question, who owns your body? How would you feel if someone forced you to do things with your body you don't want to do or that violate your beliefs? Can you think of any law, asking men to do something medically with their bodies they don't want to do? So and so on. It's just they're very, very good. It's really the decision is just so outrageous. So there's so many ways to go at it. But yeah, asking questions, it's a really good way to go about it. It's just it's kind of like what this jerk on Fox does. What's his Tucker? He asked a question where he knows he pushes the envelope, and then he leaves it there, sort of like he's sort of like a rhetorical question, and it's he's dangerous. But anyway, but we should do questions. We should ask questions. Yeah. It's a non-confrontational way to talk to just all kinds of people, So that's what I have on reproductive freedom.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So this is something on. Anyway, so back to this also message structure, but let me get to Antonia's. Okay. So this is basically why are you a Democrat, right? So she wrote this dichotomies, okay, which I wanted to get to. So empathy versus self-interest. So Empathy, she writes, is the driving force behind everything we do. You know, and patriotism is caring what happens to all Americans. Then the other one is interdependence versus self-reliance. Democrats recognize that as people who live together in a society, we all depend on each other, and we have an obligation to take care of each other. We take responsibility for ourselves and for each other. Care for the greater good is a moral obligation, period. Cooperation versus competition. You know, without regard for the greater good, playing field, we believe that while there is a place for competition, our society runs on cooperation. Even government is just a tool that we use to cooperate on a larger scale. It's cooperation is humanity's superpower. And the other one is shared prosperity versus scarcity. Okay, so we're on the side of abundance, right? You know, they're on the side of sort of fixed pie system, right? We want to grow the pie. So anyway, conservatives use the competition frame to drive wedges between people and fear mongering about scarcity. To them, someone else's gain always inevitably has to mean you're lost. Say, for instance, they used it in student debt relief. And the undeserving are coming to take what's yours, right? I'm talking about immigrants. Competition is about fighting over the pie. Cooperation is about making sure there is enough pie for everyone, like creating enough good schools and enough good jobs, and even creating different kinds of schools and jobs to meet different people's needs and economic development. You know, it's growing the pie. Freedom to thrive, basically. So we can strive for abundance rather than accepting scarcity. We just have to make choices that reflect our belief that everybody deserves to succeed to thrive.
Well, okay.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
No, you go ahead. Is it?
So
It's time, right?
let's wrap it up.
Absolutely.
Losing some people, and we can pick this up on February 1st.
The next one. Absolutely. So,
do you mind before you close real quick to go back to the slide on gun violence so I can take a picture? Because we're starting to lobby on that now.
Sure. Let me see.
And I don't know when we'll get access to
the slides. Yeah. Yeah, I have to, I'm going to have to shrink it before it can be sent. I'll send a link, actually.
Great. Let me just.
We'll send a link in the post workshop email.
You passed the gun violence one. Hang on.
Oh, I passed it?
Yeah. Go back right there. Okay, let me grab it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, great. Excellent.
Yeah, so basically what the exercise that I had for you guys was, you know, freedom to blank, and then just tell me, you know, fill in the blank, and then freedom from, right? And then, yeah. So like, say the thing that I wrote there at the bottom, okay, common sense gun safety. I think I probably got this out of Everytown's website. Like common sense gun safety policies save lives and protect our freedom from fear. And that's a good one. Freedom from fear. We talked about that earlier, right? And Roosevelt, you know, our FDR. We need public safety measures protecting people's freedom from fear of being shot or seeing your children shot at school or in your community. So yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Great.
You're welcome. You're
All
welcome.
right.
Listen, thank you all for attending. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Federico, and thank you.
Let's keep learning, folks. Just go to the places I put in the chat. Just continue. Let this be it's a journey, okay? A journey where we're to improving the way we communicate, okay?
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Good night, everyone. Good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night. You're welcome.